All right, great. Well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with this group and hopefully answer all those questions that you just keeps you awake at night. So again, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. So I manage one of our four divisions here at OSFM. It's the Regulatory Services Division. Today, going to kind of touch on three things, OSFM rules, processes, and authorities in regards to fireworks display permits, or excuse me, permits, local jurisdictions, rules, and authorities, and then what the future of the program looks like kind of currently, kind of our transition to modernization of the program and what that might look like in the near future. So again, in regulatory services, I have 8 different regulatory programs. One of them is the fireworks program, which is, as already said, is what we're going to talk about today. I think if we could, maybe we'll just hold questions till the end, because sometimes the answer to the question is in the upcoming slides. So happy to answer questions at the end. So as you see, I have all the fun programs and all the things that we tell people they can or can't do, or how they need to do it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about industry definitions of fireworks, and let me preface this with I am not a fireworks industry expert as much as I would like to be. There is a ton to unpack there. I've been the manager of the fireworks program for 9 years. Of the division. And though I have learned a lot about administering the program and some about fireworks, it doesn't make me an expert in fireworks. So I'm going to share what I know. I'm going to try to answer any questions that I can. And there may be questions if it's really deep into firework product. I may not have the answer to, but we'll just see how this goes. So I kind of wanted to start out with industry definitions because it kind of sets, in my mind, the foundation as we go into Oregon definitions. And as I'm sure all of you know, Oregon has a different layer of consumer legal fireworks. So as you've already seen here, industry defines fireworks kind of into these two categories. 1.3G, which is really not available or shouldn't be to the regular consumer. And these are fireworks that we see used in displays and that are operated by professional, excuse me, pyrotechnicians. 1.4G is also aerial fireworks, but in the industry level, it is considered a consumer legal firework. But they can also be used in professional displays as well, depending on what the want is out of that display. So the 1.4, as we look at this definition in Oregon, is really what people are probably going over the border to another state and getting these fireworks and bringing them back and using, excuse me, using them without a permit and not getting them from a Oregon permitted wholesaler. However, Oregon adds kind of a different, an additional layer through statute definition. Consumer fireworks means a cone, fountain, cylindrical fountain, a flitter, sparkler, a ground spinner, an illuminating torch, or a wheel, or a combination of two or more of those items, and any other items other than exempt fireworks containing 500 grams of less of pyrotechnic composition that the state fire marshal recognizes by rule to be suitable for retail sale to members of the general public. There's a lot of words there. But that starts to get build towards what a Oregon consumer legal firework is. There's a term here other than exempt fireworks. I didn't include that definition in this presentation. But exempt fireworks are those fireworks, and it's a small number of them that can be sold year round. Sometimes you'll see those maybe at Bi-Mart or other stores that sell maybe party items. So those are like those little plug poppers, things like that. Those are an unregulated firework and exempt from the statutes. Okay, so Oregon illegal fireworks. So if we go to Rule 837-012-0510, then we get a little bit more into a definition of what a consumer legal firework is in Oregon. And that's kind of the common term. And so this actually defines what an illegal firework is. And so that means any firework that other than a consumer firework, including but not limited to any firework that flies into the air or explodes or behaves in an uncontrolled and unpredictable manner. And retail fireworks means a consumer firework as defined in ORS 48111. And the term includes a firework designed with the means to roll or move while remaining on the ground that travels 12 feet or less horizontally on a smooth surface. So you take those two things together, and that is what determines what an Oregon consumer legal firework is. And that can be used without a permit. So these are the fireworks that you're familiar with at the stands and tents and in retail stores up to 4th of July. So kind of a side-by-side comparison here, kind of put all that together. Industry standards 1.3, the professional displays not approved for consumers. 1.4, professional and consumer use, and then the Oregon layer. So 1.4, aerial, professional and consumer use. A permit is required. Must buy from an Oregon permitted wholesaler. And then 1.4G Oregon consumer, because those are still considered a 1.4. They don't explode, don't leave the ground. They don't behave in an uncontrolled manner, and they don't travel across the ground more than 12 feet, and a permit is not required. As many of you probably know, there could be local regulation, prohibition, or permits that may apply. So there could be another layer of permitting in addition to the state layer. And I'll touch on that a little bit in a few minutes through this presentation. To add to that, OSFM does not require, so if there is a local permitting requirement, OSFM does not require to see that permit before we issue ours. It's completely separate, and there's no condition at the local level for us to issue our permit. So what are our authorities? So we issue permits for the wholesale, retail sales of fireworks, displays, special effect fireworks, that's TV, movie productions, plays, concerts, things like that. Pest control fireworks, so this is a specific type of firework that can be used to keep geese off of golf courses, deer away from grapes, wineries, crops, things like that. We also issued display operator certificates, and we are given civil penalty authority through statute. So the permits, what and how long? So a wholesale permit is valid for 1 year. The renewal period is generally at the end of the year of which the current permit is expiring. So we usually make notification to our wholesalers in the fall that the renewal is coming up. They are required to submit their applications by mid-December, and then we get those issued before January 1, and those are valid for a year. We do allow new applicants for wholesale to apply at any time during the year. But generally we have a renewal period, and rarely do we get any new ones throughout the year. And we hover right around the 13 to 16 wholesalers with our state, and not all of those are within Oregon. I'm not sure exactly how many are. Probably about a 50-50 split, maybe a 60-40. So there's not a whole lot of wholesalers in Oregon. So quite a few of them are out of the state. Retail applications for the retail fireworks and consumer fireworks. We begin to get those applications in February. ramps up a little bit in March and continues to ramp up as we approach June 23rd. I would say our busiest months are probably May and June, maybe last half of April. Then the work curve really starts to get steep. We issue approximately over 600 retail permits a year and around 300 display permits. So for fireworks season, I call it, approaching the 4th of July, we're doing around 1,000 permits between the two each year. Our display special effects permits, basically, we kind of get those throughout the year. Again, it could be concerts, TV movie productions, plays, etc. So those just kind of trickle in all year long. Operator certificates are valid for every 3 years, so we go through that process every 3 years. Pest control permits can be issued at any time, and they are valid also for 3 years. And all the permits combined, as I said, we issue approximately 1,000 or more a year. So if you boil all that down, really our busiest season is really February through right up to 4th of July. Because once sales opens, we begin to get revisions, and that keeps the workload up for a couple of days. I'll get into that a little bit more. So what's our resources to do all this work? I have 2 full-time employees for the processing and issuing of permits. And basically, high level, they receive the the applications, review them for all the requirements, and they approve them, and then they issue them. They audit the fees that are submitted with the applications to make sure the right fees are being paid. Because sometimes we will get a whole batch of retail permits. So, we have to make sure that total amount paid matches the number of applications received. Frequently, applications are missing information, so they seek to obtain that information from the applicant. Sometimes information may not be clear, so they'll seek clarification. And then, as I said, as we get real close to the opening of season, some revisions can start to happen. And then once sales starts to happen and some of those tents and stands are inspected and correction notices or orders are given, perhaps by the local jurisdiction, then we get sometimes some other revisions. And then after that, we're kind of into smooth sailing, hopefully, until after the 4th of July. But those same 2 staff also administer the LPG or propane exams and licenses, receive those applications and approve those. And that is a year-round workload. So those same 2 staff are doing that work every day as well. So what's the application process? Most of you are probably familiar with this. So basically, the applicant completes the application with hopefully, all the required information, and then they submit that to the local jurisdiction for approval. Now, they should be submitting the entire application to the local jurisdiction, not just the signature pages. That's the intent of the statute of the local authority to approve, so that you can see that entire application, whether it's display or retail, and it meets your expectations and standards of fire code, etc., for that activity. So you can't do that if they do not submit the entire application. So hopefully, folks that are submitting applications to you are doing that. If not, certainly please feel obligated that you need to tell them that you need to see the entire application. And if you need any assistance with that message, you can let us know and we can try to assist with that. So for displays, that requires both local police and fire and law enforcement authorities to sign, giving approval for the display. And then for retail sales of consumer fireworks, it's only the local fire authority. Once the application is submitted with payment, Then we review that application, as I said, verify the information is complete, and process it and issue the permit. I'm going to get into modernization, as I mentioned, in a little bit later, but up until this year, all those applications were all done on paper, as you know, because you saw those as well. Um, and we're moving away from paper, but we are still receiving those. And so we're working kind of in two different systems right now. So we still have the paper process, and those applications are actually sent to a PO box, of which a bank processes them. They don't get sent straight to us. The bank takes those checks, deposits them. They give us a statement of the deposits and submit all the applicant documents. They scan them and send all that information to us electronically. And then that's where my staff goes into a portal, receives the information, audits the fees for the what's been submitted that day or with that batch, make sure the fees are appropriate, and then begin to process the applications. So that's kind of a bit of workload, but as we move into modernization, we see that uh, improving quite a bit. So who is the local jurisdiction? So it is for the law enforcement, either the municipal fire department, police department, or the sheriff. For our fire service, it's either the municipal fire department or the fire district. Or only in areas where there is unprotected areas in Oregon for fire protection, the OSFM Deputy State Fire Marshal may sign for the retail sales approval. And that is the only instance that OSFM staff can sign for the fire authority. That was a change we implemented probably about 8 years ago. And then for displays in unprotected areas, statute actually puts that responsibility on the county court or their designee. So this was also a change about 8 or 9 years ago. We worked with counties, county judges on that piece. I don't think there's a lot of instances that that is occurring, but there are a couple of very remote areas in Oregon that we see a display application from time to time. And then when we did that, we recognized that county courts or their designees are not going to have the expertise in fireworks or fire code or things like that. So our deputy state fire marshals are available to provide those folks technical assistance when they're considering the approval of a application. So here is a piece that allows local authorities or local regulation of fireworks. So as you look at the fireworks statutes, and they're really not that long. The rules are pretty extensive, but the statutes are not terribly long. There is language in there about OSFM shall issue permits. And then there's language about local regulation and supervision, and we're going to get through those parts here in a moment. And as we look at the statutes at kind of a higher level, I can't speak to the thoughts of the legislatures when these statutes were written, but we like to believe that they saw the state as kind of a one-place clearinghouse, if you will, of display permits. Hopefully to maybe streamline the permitting process for the applicant. So let's say and this is just some assumptions on my part, but let's say you are big in the fireworks industry, you do a lot of retail sales stands, you do several displays, and you do those across across different areas of the state. If this process was not in place, you may be trying to navigate multiple different permitting processes, applications, timelines, fees, etc. So I tend to think that at the time that the idea that the state would be the one clearinghouse process for permits to make it easier on industry. but it does not take away the ability for local authorities to regulate or prohibit. So, as you see here, under statute, displays are under the supervision of the local police and fire departments or the county court. It places that responsibility clearly on those shoulders in the statute. And the statute, basically, to paraphrase, says it shall not be hazardous to property or endanger any person. Rule gets a little deeper. Operator, police, or fire must postpone. So, for a display, if there are unsafe conditions, and you can go and look at the rule and get more specific into the language, but to paraphrase it or summarize it, adverse conditions, weather, crowd control, what have you, the local police or fire authority or the operator, and the word is must postpone that display. Postponement could be 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 week, 3 months, 8 months, whatever. And that kind of is worked out between those three parties of when the next appropriate time might be. So it gives the ability for control at the local level rather than me or my staff sitting behind a desk in Salem for the entire state. So ORS 48160 gives local jurisdictions to regulate. So, and I think Eugene is a prime example. I think Eugene has put in, they haven't banned, I don't think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they have put in a little bit tighter restrictions on when fireworks can be sold, when they can be used. So there's an exercise of regulating. Other municipalities, especially in recent years, have done complete prohibitions except for professional displays. So no sales of consumer fireworks, no use of fireworks, just professional displays because they go through that, hopefully that vetting process with the local fire authority to mitigate fire risk. Local jurisdictions have the ability to, again, regulate display days, use of fireworks, days, times, and also have the ability to do emergency prohibitions or emergency bans. A really good example of this, so I forget what year, it could have been 2020 maybe, 21. Anyway, in recent years, some of you may recall that in June, we had a week of very hot weather, reaching a day or two. I think one day hit 115 degrees here in the valley. Very unprecedented. And this was just a couple of weeks before 4th of July and displays start to happen and fireworks sales starts to happen. So our office started to get a lot of questions from local jurisdictions about what is their ability to ban? Because we, as the state, cannot just do a statewide ban or ban certain areas for the use of fireworks. But again, as we look at 48160, there is the ability, the local jurisdictions to regulate and do emergency bans. You'll see I have in blue text, consult your legal counsel. I am not your legal counsel. Please don't use my words for your decisions. But when we look at the statutes, we believe that is what it says and allows. And as a result of those questions in that year, several municipalities did some emergency bans because of the concern of the heat and how quickly the fuels cured and dried going into the 4th of July. So if that is something on your mind, I would suggest start having those conversations now, not a week before the 4th of July, so you kind of know what that path might be for you or your jurisdiction, should that be something you may want to exercise. The statute also says neither the local or the state can trump each other. We cannot approve something that a local does not, and vice versa. So as example, unless it's changed, I believe the city of Grants Pass prohibits the sales of retail consumer fireworks within the city limits. So they have made that local regulation. The state does not have the authority to to approve anything that they have not approved. So ability and requirement to regulate, I've talked quite a bit about that. So governments for fire districts, the statutes call this out a little separately and a little different. And basically, to summarize, what statute says is the regulation or prohibition, whatever that might be, needs to be done by the governing body of the district. The ordinance needs to be adopted after public notice and hearing. You have to provide for that. And that has to happen the year prior to which you want to implement it. So prior to Jan 1 of the operative year. So statute calls that out again separately and defines a process should a fire district want to consider some sort of regulation of fireworks within the district. Again, seek your legal counsel. So this is kind of a matrix we provided several years ago to try to kind of boil all these things down to something a little bit more digestible. Apologize if it's a little blurry, but this is kind of just lays it all out there. Who can do what or does what. Retail sales of consumer fireworks, starting upper left corner. Protected areas, local fire approval signature is required on the application. Unprotected areas, no approval at the local level, but the deputy state fire marshal can do that approval, and then OSFM issues the permit. Another example, 3 rows down, enforcement seizure, small quantities of illegal fireworks. And I'm going to get into enforcement of illegal activity in a moment. But that's local law enforcement. OSFM does not do seizures, confiscations. We don't accept seized fireworks. We don't accept fireworks that somebody may find and say, I want to hand these in. I found them in my kid's closet. They went to college and we cleaned up their closet and found them. And so you can use this matrix just kind of boil down to who does what. And at the bottom, you'll see improvised devices, things like that. Work with local law enforcement or the OSP explosives unit. So into enforcement. Statute does give OSFM civil penalty authority. And how we exercise that is, so the maximum civil penalty authority we have is $500. And we exercise that as if there is like administrative violations of the statutes of the rules, such as maybe a display operator did a display and doesn't have a current certificate, or maybe sales occurred without a permit, and some of the other things you see here. Those would be things that we would look at potential civil penalty enforcement. So there's some stop gaps in these violations. So for example, a consumer legal firework retail permit holder must present that permit to the wholesaler of whom they're getting their fireworks from before the fireworks are released. So hopefully those sales are not happening without a permit, unless they're going to an unpermitted wholesaler from another source that we don't even know about. So hopefully some of these stop gaps or these violations these gaps are filled with process, so that hopefully these don't occur. It's interesting. I did have a few years ago and it was during COVID actually, a display operator, longtime display operator. He does this one display every single year. It's a community event. Because of the social distancing during COVID, Uh, I think almost every single display that got applied for and that was permitted was made invalid. But this individual went ahead and did the display. They already had the fireworks. And what was interesting is we didn't become aware of that until some of his operator assistants, they have to demonstrate that they've done work on a display to get their own operator certificate or to keep their records up. So once we became aware that this happened, we let them know that, you can't do this, don't do it again. We didn't issue civil penalties. I didn't want to get down that lane, but I did use some, strong words with the individual. And then he wanted, not him, but his assistants wanted credit for the display that they worked on. And I denied that we are not going to recognize one of the things that they swear or certify that they're going to follow all the rules and requirements as an operator. And then they wanted credit for being an assistant on a display when they were violating the rules. So that was an interesting scenario. And I explained to them, I'm not giving you credit for a display when you violated the rules. So I don't think, to our knowledge, that hasn't happened ever since then. So law enforcement, statute OORS 48120, our office, as I'm sure maybe local jurisdictions get complaints from residents of Oregon, either the illegal use of fireworks, being used at the moment, or advising that they're going to be used illegally in the neighborhood. They are every year. We get those complaints. But ORS 48120 puts the responsibility of the enforcement of the illegal use of fireworks on law enforcement with either the city, county, or the state. And so when we get those calls, that is who I encourage them to work with, even if it's pre-violation. So, again, I think we all know neighborhoods across the state, people are using illegal fireworks or using the 1.4 fireworks without a permit. And so I encourage folks to work with their law enforcement in advance or during, and to use non-emergency phone numbers, not 911, unless 911 is warranted. So that is the direction we try to point people to. Something very important that I learned a few years ago, and perhaps you're aware of this, that tampered firework is well, let me back up. So the illegal use of fireworks is a Class B misdemeanor and subject to up to a $2,500 fine. Tampering with fireworks or altering fireworks is a whole nother level. And I learned of this through the Oregon State Police Explosives Unit. Fireworks are designed in a specific way and to work a specific way. And as soon as you begin to alter them, you are now creating potentially an explosive device, and that's a whole different level of crime and also very dangerous. I recently learned apparently you can make a bomb out of um, just sparklers. People are taking multiple sparklers, lighting them, or excuse me, taping them together very tightly with multiple layers of tape, and then they leave one sparkler kind of exposed as the fuse, and then light it. And you can Google that on YouTube, and you'll see what happens. And they go off like an M80. So tampered fireworks are very dangerous, even as much as taping, like, oh, one fountain's cool, three would be better. Let's tape three of them together. Well, now they are altered, and that can present dangerous situations. So tampered fireworks, explosives, strongly encouraged to not be near them, and contact your local law enforcement if they can contact Oregon State Police Explosives Unit, or they can, if they have their own explosives unit, Those are the right folks with the right training and equipment to handle those situations. So, how do you know who's permitted? We list our wholesalers on our website about every January or so. We put the new list up, and you'll look at the list and you'll see, well, there's more than 15 or 16 here. Well, we'll break them into the categories. So, one wholesaler may sell more than one type of firework. They may do consumer retail and display. Some might do those two and pest control. So we break them out into categories on the list. So you may see the name of the wholesaler more than once. And then we provide a list of the retail permits that have been issued just before sales opens. We provide that to you, the local jurisdictions, so that you can be aware which applications got permitted. And if you elect to go do some spot inspections, you know which ones those are and where they are. And then again, I think I mentioned earlier, revisions start to happen at that time. Usually revisions, they're still going to need the local authority approval. And as most of you probably know, often that is accomplished just through an email that perhaps the applicant can forward from you to us, approving the revision, whatever that revision might be. And then we will issue a new permit. So who you're going to call? I kind of touched on this. So law enforcement, illegal fireworks, explosives, old fireworks, dynamite, tampered fireworks, old ordnance, bombs, missiles, grenades. Once in a while in my 9 years, I've gotten maybe 3 or 4 calls, and my example of finding fireworks in the child's closet was a true one. Also had one, like my grandfather passed away. We're cleaning out the garage and we found some dynamite and it's crystallized. What should I do? I said, well, get away, number one. And then we called Oregon State Police directly just to help facilitate that connection. So if you ever come across these situations, feel free, again, call your local law enforcement, or you could probably call Oregon State Police Explosives Unit directly. Go through your 911 system, whatever is best in your jurisdiction. And if you need some assistance connecting those dots, you can give us a call as well. I have a direct line to a couple of the OSP explosives folks, and basically I'll just hand off the information to them, and they're typically quite good at following up very quickly. So any questions about those, again, you can contact us, but if you see these, clear the area, back away, don't touch them, and call for help. That's probably a given, a no-brainer, but wanted to cover it. Okay, the future. So as I'm sure all of you know, paper application process has been going on for a very long time. I would have liked to modernize sooner, but we weren't able to, but we now are, which has been excellent. We have our own IT department that can build our systems for us. So we started with our wholesale application and doing an online application submission process. So rather than filling out the multiple pages of the paper application, they did all that on an online system, and then also did an online payment as well using a credit card. For the retail sales, phase one was last year. Our IT department built a software system that we entered the data into that was removing us out of our old 90s access databases. We were still receiving paper applications. And then this year, that online application process for retail went live. That is being used. We are working through bugs. And just when you think you've thought of everything a user could do, they find something else that you didn't think of. So we've got some folks that are being creative, and so we're working through some enhancements and bugs. But it's pretty slick. As you know, you're still receiving that paper application. But once the applicant has the completed application or information, they can go into our system, enter the information, and if everything is in there correctly, and then they make their online payment, then we are able to review and issue that permit in about 2 minutes, as opposed to my one or two staff data entering 600 plus applications in a period of about 4 months. And then phase three, we're hoping for next year, is the entire process will be electronic. I do not know exactly what that will look like, but we are hoping for something that is a lot easier for you, the local authority, that an application can maybe be sent to you electronically. You can electronically submit it, or excuse me, approve it, send it back to the applicant, and then the applicant can send it on to us. So we're hoping for that next year, as I said. And as we build that system, we will engage stakeholders, including you, to get understanding of what, maybe what would work for you, what maybe would not work for you. So potentially this year, we'll reach out to OFMA for some stakeholders to help us with that, with building that system. So we're very excited here about moving into modernization. We're taking different steps. First, the wholesale, the retail, uh, doing pyrotechnician operator certificates, and then we'll be implementing modernization into our propane program as well, because we're still doing paper there, unfortunately. Let's see, I think I'm coming close to the end. So yeah, talked a little bit about it already. So the future, we're hoping to kick off a project this year, to do a complete review of the fireworks program. The statutes, well, we're not looking to open the statutes, but the rules have not gone through probably any significant review or amendments for probably 15 years, maybe more. And really, it's time to just take a look at everything. Do they still align with industry? Do they still align with product? And just make sure the program and the regulations are modernized for current times and make sure they align. Something that's come to our attention, and so smoke grenades as an example here, we recently became aware of how frequently these smoke grenades are being used by consumers at like paintball parks and paintball games and things like that. And we kind of did a poll of state fire marshal offices across the country, and it kind of depends really on the SDS of the product, but in many cases, these items are falling into the definition of a firework and should be regulated. And right now, they are not. A lot of paintball supplier, hobby stores type stores are selling them, and people can go in, buy them, play with them, use them. And so we hope to be looking at that in the near future and determining level of regulation that might work, but is not also overburdensome. So more news to come on that. But again, just, you know, modernizing and having regulations align with current times. I think that concludes my presentation, which I think is uh, good timing. Got 15 minutes left. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or at least try to answer them.
Thank you, Chief. That was a great presentation. I'm looking in the chat to see if anybody's got a question in the chat. I'm not seeing any in the chat. If anybody else has a question, if they'd like to raise their hand, we could let you ask your question. Not seeing any. Okay, great. Well, again, we appreciate your time, Chief, and that was a lot of good information. I can't wait for the ability to do that all digitally. That's going to be a lot better for us. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Excellent.
right.
I'll just conclude with if anyone ever has any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to contact our office. We're happy to have a conversation. If you're getting an application and you're just not sure about something, please reach out to us. We want to be here and be a partner with you.
Great. Thank you very much. And again, everyone else watching, we won't have a lunch and learn next month. We'll have ABM. And if you haven't signed up to attend ABM, I recommend that you do. It's going to be a great time, a lot of good information. Thank y'all. And we're going to give you back some of your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.